first for Mr. Powys. 13 residents of the Burlington Court care home in Glasgow have died in the last 7 days. They are suspected of having contracted COVID-19 but have not been tested because they weren't in hospital. How much higher do you think the death figures could be in the UK than what we are seeing in the official statistics? Because their deaths will not be in the numbers that we have set out today. And for Mr. Gove, if I may, nearly 1 million new claims have been made to Universal Credit just in the last few days. It is a system designed to encourage people into work, but it does that by incentivizing work rather than relying on the benefit. But when the vast majority of these new claimants are going to be unable to seek work, is it right that Universal Credit be made more generous?
I'll hand over to Steve first of all to deal with your direct question about social care, and then I'll come back on Universal Credit.
So with great sadness and unfortunately, clearly deaths do happen in the community, and those are people who do not go to hospital and therefore do not pass away in hospital. So the figures that we report from the NHS are the figures for deaths in hospitals. The Office for National Statistics is able to report on deaths that occur in the community through the death registration process, and in the last week they have started to do that. So yes, I would expect that deaths will be higher than the number that are reported from hospitals, but I think it will only be in the days and weeks ahead, as that data starts to come through from ONS, that we will be able to answer the question that you've asked. This disease does not discriminate, or this virus does not discriminate. It affects everybody in all settings, unfortunately, of all ages, and therefore, as I've said, I do think sadly that we will continue to see the high number of deaths that we've seen at the moment. But as we start to get control of this through social distancing, in a few weeks, that will start to fall.
And on Universal Credit, Tom, you're absolutely right that Universal Credit is designed to support people in work and to help people to find work, and designed to incentivize work. But we're living, as you acknowledge, through unprecedented economic times, and Universal Credit is the means by which we're giving support to those who need it most. It's not the only means, however, that the government is deploying. As you'll be aware, there are up to 1.5 million people in the most vulnerable category, the shielded vulnerable, who we are distributing food and prescription medicines to. And it's also the case that a new task force led by George Eustice and by the Food and Farming Minister Victoria Prentice are working with local authorities and charities and others to identify other people who are vulnerable, who lack social networks, or who lack resources, in order to make sure that they can get the support that they need. But of course, we keep the whole welfare system under review in order to ensure that we can support people financially through a difficult time. Is there anything that you wanted to come back on?
Just on that point, Mr. Gove, your colleague Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, acknowledged that he couldn't live on £94 a week for statutory sick pay. Universal Credit has been made more generous by the government, but only by £20 a week, bringing it in line with statutory sick pay. Do you believe that that is acceptable when you have millions of people, many of whom will have been in full-time work, paying their taxes, that is now the level that the government can support them at? Or, given that these are exceptional times, would you consider making the system more generous?
I think we have to consider the nature of the system and whether or not we do need to ensure that we better support the vulnerable. We keep that constantly under review, and I think it's important that we do recognise that this is a very, very difficult economic time for very many. Yeah. I'll hand over to Ben Kentish from LBC now.